Presenting today's webinar, RFID and Printed Label Failure Root Causes and Solutions, are Paul Arguin, Senior Director of Global RFID for r-pac International, and Nicholas Garcia, Vice President of Operations and RFID Product Manager for California Label Products. So without further ado, I am pleased to turn the program over to our first presenter, Nicholas Garcia. Take it away, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on what side of the country you're in. You may have seen a little bit of what I'm about to present today before. If you were at the fall conference in 2018, there was a much longer extended version of a presentation on this topic done by my company along with our verifier manufacturing partner, Axicon. So for any of those who were there, this may be a bit of a review. But without further ado, we'll get into what we have for today. A little bit about our company. We were founded in 1998, or we're headquartered here in Los Angeles, and we have offices in Hong Kong and Tijuana, and production in a few more locations across the country, as well as southern China and Tijuana. What do we do? Label solutions, tag solutions for various industries, including the ones listed here, and also RFID label and tag products, mainly for apparel and footwear, including EPC management systems. We have online ordering available via our web platform, CalLink. And we also supply a large number of label printing systems for in-plant printing, such as thermal printers. A little bit about me. Oops, sorry. I've been with the company since 2004. My background in particular is IT, and I worked on a few initiatives such as expanding our quick print service bureaus from United States to Asia and Latin America, and the direction and launch of CalLink, our online platform, which I mentioned, and then also the development of our in-plant EPC tracking system, which is called MyLink. The topic of today is chargebacks, and every manufacturer, I'm sure including all of you, as well as other 3PL partners, has to deal with chargebacks and deductions. I'll be specifically talking about carton labels, GS1 128 carton labels today, which we've seen as one of the largest sources of chargebacks for many of our customers. So are the retail partners, many of your customers, they depend on the readability of these labels to ensure the operation at their DCs. I'm not sure how many of you have had a chance to make it out to some of the DCs. I know there's been various tours that have been set up at the RVC fall conferences, and I myself had the opportunity to get into there, and the one that comes to mind is the Macy's one in New Jersey, and it gives you a chance to see why the GS1 carton labels are so important and how they are critical to the automation of the sorting of all the cartons coming in from the vendors. And when the labels are not read properly, the carton is rejected and it goes down a chute into where it has to be processed manually by staff, and the result is a chargeback. Okay, we're going to go through the problem sources. Part of this came from the survey which RVCF did, which I have taken and condensed and organized and boiled down into these 6 categories. And they're listed here in no particular order. But if you do have the Excel file that was sent out shortly, a little while ago, then you can follow along there. There's more information listed there, more detailed, and a nice chart that really couldn't be integrated into the slides because of the amount of information there, but great to follow along. And I will be sliding over and referencing it throughout the presentation. Okay, but these are the 6 categories that are the source of carton label chargebacks. We've got application, durability, print quality, barcode quality, and specific label format, and then missing and erroneous data. Again, these are listed in no particular order. We're going to start off with I won't say the easy one, but the category where the manufacturer or the 3PL has the most control over what's going on. So I kind of feel that these are like the softballs, the ones that can be fixed with a little bit more surety. The first one, label missing. I think that kind of speaks for itself. So that's, if we don't have the label on the carton, then I think we've already lost the battle there. So again, that can come from errors made by staff, or many of you, if you're a larger manufacturer, or if you're inside a 3PL, you will most likely have a print and apply system where the actual carton label is being applied by a machine as the cartons run along the conveyor. So errors in either one of those areas can cause there to be a missing label. Missing or incorrect data, we've listed some bill of lading here, PO number, the carton number, department, etc. Those again are going to be software related, bad data, or in some cases, errors made by staff. Maybe a wrong selection made in some kind of order processing or carton processing system. But again, these are things that can be fixed. I mean, we should have good data in our systems to begin with. Without that, there's really no way to print a correct label. Identifiers and barcode. This is kind of a combination between the setup, but also bad data. The GS1 has come up with the specification for the SSCC number, and part of it is having the application identifier at the beginning. Using an SSCC from a previous shipment, obviously that's going to cause a problem. There's going to be duplication, especially if it's going to the same retailer, and that will cause a chargeback right away. If the SSCC isn't found on the ASN or the ship notice that's been transmitted to the retailer, then also there'll be a problem there. They won't know what to expect, they won't know what they're getting, and their system won't know how to process it. So again, these are all either bad data, software, transmission errors, things that can be fixed by the manufacturer, the 3PL. Okay, from there, we're going to move on to label format. Incorrect label format. Again, still kind of a softball. You know, when you're working with a particular retailer, they're going to let you know what the label format needs to be, what information needs to be on there, how it should be applied to the carton. So that error can be fixed by working with your IT team, making sure the software is set up properly, or it could be a staff error where they've chosen the wrong format if that's within their power to choose. Same thing for an incorrectly formatted SSCC number. Barcode symbology, this tends to cause a lot of confusion. We've got the code 128 symbology, where the GS1 128 is a subset of that using a really specific identifier, which is the SSCC number. So this really, although we are using the bars the way they're set up in the code 128 spec, technically the barcode is a GS1 128 barcode if it carries that identifier inside of it. So again, this is kind of semantics, but this would only happen if we had some setup problems in the software that's creating the barcodes. So again, that may be on the manufacturer side. It may be a third party where the manufacturer is using a portal to create barcodes. Or again, it may be inside of a 3PL. But these are all things that can be addressed prior to the labels being printed. Quiet space around the barcode. That is the space on the left and right hand side of barcodes. And I guess we don't have a picture of that here. But when the laser is reading the barcode, it has to scan all the bars at once. And if there's anything too close on the left and the right, that can interfere with the reading of the barcode. So that again would be a format setup problem, either the barcode too close to the edge of the label or some text added to the label that is right near the left-hand or right-hand side of the barcode. Placement of barcodes or human readable text. This again, it just kind of goes to what the retailer or a trading partner is asking for. We want to follow their format and place everything accordingly in our label setup. here's the picture we're looking for. So this is a good example. We've got a barcode on a carton label, and again, it's very close to the edge. So the problem here is that the way the lasers work to scan the barcodes, they're looking at white and dark, and there's a possibility for this label to be on a darker surface, which would cause interference with the reading of that barcode. So the quiet space spec ensures that there is some white label or white space on both sides of the barcode in order to clearly define where the barcode is and prevent any interference during the reading. All right, from there, we're going to move into print quality. We'll just take a quick dip over here to the spreadsheet. So again, we've got this chart where I've got the 6 main fixes or categories of fixes. And within here, with every root cause that we've mentioned, or that I've mentioned during the presentation, we've got a yes or a no to whether they can be fixed with these different categories of fixes or upgrades, as well as some detailed explanation on the right-hand side. Print quality. So this is one of the harder categories to address, and mainly because as a manufacturer, you've got lots of staff, maybe you have lots of printers, or again, maybe you have a 3PL doing this. There's a lot of variables here that can be difficult to control. So one of the main things we'll see in print quality are white and jagged streaks that look somewhat like this in this picture. And that can run through the text, cause it to be illegible, and definitely run through the barcode and cause it to be not scannable. So this is caused, as you'll see on the chart there, by ribbon wrinkle, and you'll only see this with thermal transfer printing. But the way that can be addressed is adjustments to the printer and retraining of staff. Straight white lines in print, also very common. This is a very small example, but if you've ever dealt with carton labels, you've probably seen worse. And this is caused by the printed elements being burnt out. So when the printed elements are burnt out, there's only one solution, which is to change the printhead and replace it with a fresh one, and that's going to get rid of that issue. All right, move on to the next, which are straight gray or black lines in the print. And they're gonna look somewhat like this in this picture. And that's gonna be caused by some debris or dirt on the printhead, but it can interfere with the barcode and cause it not to be scannable. So the solution to that is gonna be cleaning the printhead. We recommend cleaning them with high quality alcohol wipes. And this is something that should be done multiple times during the day, multiple times per shift by the operators to avoid this kind of issue. Okay, so we're gonna move on to another subset of print quality, which is barcode quality. And again, if we're following along here in the Excel sheet, we've addressed these 3 under print quality, and now we're moving into barcode quality. Okay, barcode quality, poor symbol decodability, which is more explained by saying uneven or irregular bars. We have a picture of that here. And what it's going to be caused by is poor setup of the printer, possibly poor materials, dirty materials, or incorrect settings in the printer, such as the heat setting. And so that's what's going to cause this particular issue, but it's going to kill your barcode quality and may cause it to be illegible. So those are the kind of adjustments we can do to fix that issue. Poor symbol contrast, the barcode isn't dark enough. So here's a picture of a pattern being printed from a thermal printer where there's some opaqueness on the right-hand side. And also it's going to be caused by printer setup. There's various settings on the thermal printer, such as heat, pressure, position. And if they're all not set up correctly by a professional, then this is the kind of print quality we can see, which could be light. And obviously if this were a barcode, then it wouldn't be legible. All right, and then we're going to move into the next slide, which is poor symbol modulation, which is a big word for not having enough white space in the barcode, having the white spaces be too narrow. And we have a picture of that here. The main cause of this is excess heat. So all the thermal printers work with heat to transfer either the ink from the thermal transfer ribbon onto the paper, or to heat the direct thermal paper and cause the chemical reaction which produces the image. But in either case, if we have too much heat, it's not a good thing, and it can cause print that looks like this. It's fairly blotchy, and can cause the bars to close up, and that will kill your print, your symbol modulation, and cause your barcode not to be readable. Again, the solution here: work with a professional provider, work with your printer provider, and get some retraining of staff to get these settings in line and have them be where they need to be to print a quality label. And just as a summary here for barcode and print quality in general, we've got some examples of good print. So we can see here that this print is very dark, very solid. It has a little bit of a sheen to it. And in that previous slide where we talked about having too much heat, that was a good example of that we wouldn't see this nice sheen if we had too much heat in our print setup. Label application. So these are some other things that came in the survey. Wrong location on pallet. That would obviously be retraining of staff or adjustment of the print and apply system. But wrinkled labeled is something that happens. And here we've got an example of some import boxes that are being reused. It can be done. We don't recommend it. I mean, fresh cartons are always preferable, but in the case it has to be done, we want to take care not to apply the carton labels on top of tape. So in this case, we can see they're applied on top of tape, and there's a lot of wrinkling going on. That's going to affect the plane where the barcode exists and possibly cause it not to be scannable. Torn labels can also be caused by applying labels over tape as well. Durability: white background of label turns gray or black. That's going to be an example of a direct thermal label, which again we said has a chemical reaction that comes from heat. If direct thermal is used and labels have to be stored, or rather if the product is going to be stored outdoors in the sun or in a very hot environment, then direct thermal is not going to be an option because it can turn black or gray. I'm sure some of you have seen this, labels lifting up, especially labels that are applied over the corner of a carton. Again, these are import boxes, which tend to be a little bit dustier, sometimes even moist, and these labels were applied on top of tape. So those are kind of two problems that can be overcome with specialized label supplies. So our company sells different adhesives, and we have adhesives that work for these situations. And this was a customer of ours who was using a competitor's product that was a very just standard run-of-the-mill adhesive and was not strong enough to work in this very difficult situation here. Scuffed labels, one of the main things that came up in the survey, and I'm sure something you've always seen. This is some light scuffing, but even this could cause these barcodes not to be read. And then we've got an example of some extreme scuffing. So this is a worst case scenario. This is one of the harder problems, mainly because at this point, the labels are out of your control. Let's assume that you've done everything to print good quality barcodes. You've got them on the carton in the right position. The information's correct. All the things above that we've talked about are all good. They leave your facility, but they make it to the retailer, to the DC, or to the store, and this is what your barcode looks like. So in that case, again, this is what we consider the hardest issue, most difficult to face because the cartons are out of your control at this point. So there always can be some scuffing and smudging during transit or during processing at the DC. But the only real way to avoid this is to upgrade the materials, which is what we've got here in the spreadsheet. And upgrading the materials in the case of thermal transfer could be upgrading the ribbon to a higher grade ink ribbon that can be more durable, or also using a higher grade direct thermal paper. So from there, we're going to move into what we call our solution. So number one, we need to get a well-printed barcode label on the carton. Without that, we've already killed ourselves from the start there. So the solution to that is using higher quality materials. And then we've got what's called offline barcode verification or grading. And this can be done with an offline verifier, such as the Axicon that we see in this picture that my company sells. And this allows us to take a grade of not every label, but some labels and set up a QC program, which is what we recommend, to check the quality of the labels from time to time and avoid issues such as the white lines we saw where the printhead had burnt out or the streaks from the ribbon wrinkling. These are things that, again, really seasoned staff can be trained to spot, but depending on the volume moving through the facility, the speed at which labels are being printed, and then again, the knowledge level of the staff can easily be overlooked. This is where the verifier comes in. We recommend using this at the beginning of a run, at the end of a run. These devices also have a software associated with them that can print a report, and we recommend that those reports be saved either as paper documents or PDFs as part of an overall quality control program. And this can really be helpful when working with retailers and fighting chargebacks, showing the retailer that you're doing your due diligence on your side to make sure these labels are printed correctly and have good quality barcodes from the onset. One step above the offline verification is what we call online verification. This is a printer-based verification that happens at the time of printing. The leader in this field is Printronix. This particular printer has a 2D camera verifier attached to the front. And in this case, the reason it's a step above is because every single carton label or any other label that's coming out of this machine is being, the barcode is being analyzed, and it either passes or fails depending on the specifications set by the operator. So we can set this to have an ANSI grade of A or B or C, a minimum grade. And from there, the verifier will analyze each barcode as it's exiting the printer and then do one of two things depending on the quality. If it passes the quality, it will keep printing. If not, it will try to read it one more time. If it fails, then it will print a pattern over the label in order to communicate to the operator that that label should not be used, such as a checkerboard or a grid. So this is the cream of the crop as far as getting to the first solution, the first part of the solution, which is having good labels printed from the onset. Part two, again, part two is out of our control. Once the labels are printed, they have to make it to the retailer or DC in good condition and be there throughout the whole supply chain process. So this is the part that, again, is more difficult because we have less control over it. But there are some things that we can do. Again, as we talked about with the adhesion issues, upgrading the adhesive, especially when using imported or reusing corrugated, imported corrugated boxes. And then on the print durability side, for TT printing, we recommend upgrading the ink ribbon formula. But the better option from all the research that we've done is using direct thermal printing with a highly specialized product, such as the one that we offer, which is our premium DT scuff resist. And again, this is something that we've put into huge manufacturers and 3PLs across the country and save them hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. And for anybody after the presentation who wants to email me, we do have testimonials from a lot of these large manufacturers and 3PLs just kind of telling their story, where they were having trouble, which retailers were the ones that were issuing the most chargebacks to them, how they implemented this, and the amount they were able to save on a yearly basis. So that's something we have available too via email after the presentation. So we're going to do the questions and comments after Paul's presented, and from there, I am all done.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Appreciate it. It's a very comprehensive overview of potential label failures as well as some actionable solutions that can be taken to address those. So we are moving now to our second portion of the presentation, and Paul, I am going to pass the ball over to you to make you the presenter to speak about RFID. And
Wonderful, thank you.
Of course, and attendees, just as we're pulling that over and your screen is up, Paul, just a reminder that the questions box in the control panel, you are welcome to put in your questions there regarding labels or RFID, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. Take it away, Paul.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I want to thank Nicholas for his presentation. It certainly goes hand in hand with the RFID presentation. Typically, RFID requires printed variable information, so a lot of the concerns that Nicholas has pointed out are still an issue that need to be solved, and I'm going to basically augment that with the EPC encoding and unique concerns when it comes to that. Before I move on, though, I neglected to put a slide in for who r-pac is. r-pac was established in 1987, so they've been around for 34 years. Our headquarters is in New York City. We have a global presence in more than 30 locations, and we currently are the second largest RFID tag provider. We manufacture and supply multiple billions of tags annually. We also produce all types of packaging and trim, and we supply that worldwide, globally also. But for the RFID world, we do the tags, we do the hardware, and we do the software. And when I say tags, we supply blanks for you to print and encode. You can use our software for that or your own. And we also do the service bureau, which I'm going to talk about a little bit also. Now, in trying to go forward, here we go. My message here is RFID is not that easy. And certainly, as Nicholas says, you need to, for the print, you need to have the expertise behind you to assist your staff if you're going to print your own, and also to have your staff trained in maintaining the equipment, using the right product to print, and so forth. Well, RFID has the same exact issues for print, and on top of that, it's very easy to misencode a tag, put the wrong product information, wrong encoding on that tag that perhaps doesn't match the print information, perhaps doesn't have the correct data. And I'm kind of focusing on three areas: the service bureau, and whether that be a service bureau such as r-pacs or any other of our competitors out there that do service bureau, and also you can use r-trac, which is our software piece to do the order management as well as the in-plant print solutions. We have a thing called r-trace that can actually trace a tag back to its origin, back to the chip and wafer level. We track every chip we receive. We don't make the chips, but we make the inlays, and we convert it into the finished product before printing and encoding. But we track that all the way back. So if I'm able to scan a tag, I can tell you what wafer it came from, what lot exactly, and where it was that chip was produced and when. And we also have handheld tools that allow you to do QA, QC functions to make sure the tag is correctly encoded, to help you put it on the right product, and so forth. So what can you do, and what should you be aware of? It's very easy to have duplication of RFID EPCs. I'm going to get into that a little bit in a bit, but it's very easy to have, if you're not managing the serialization, it's very easy to have two of the same serial numbers of the same product. And when that happens, if you have two number ones, it's going to look like you have one product. So when you do a scan, you're going to see, basically when it decodes, it's going to say this is UPC of a certain number, and this is the serial number. And if it's the same, it's going to look, as I said, like one. You need the secret sauce of the whole thing, as I've said in many of the conferences You know, we do the RVCF fall conference, usually have a room. I do quite a few classes at that conference, and it breaks down. What I've broken down in the past is you have to make sure the encoding is correct, or the utility of the RFID is kind of worthless. So if you have duplication of serials, it's going to look like one, and you're going to get miscounts and misuses the whole time. So we, in the Service Bureau, like if you were going to do your own encoding, you need to have the tools and the presence to make sure you don't do that. And that you have to come up with a serialization plan and follow that, and don't stray from that. That's the only way you're going to prevent any duplication of tags and serial numbers. Our r-pac is a serialization and data management platform. It's an IT-based platform that allows you to, it lays out how to track that information. You as the brand owner are responsible for your serialization. That is your responsibility, but you can allow a service bureau that you're contracting with to manage that for you, and that's what most people do. Our trace, as I mentioned, logs it, and the secondary tools can do a QC to make sure. But print and barcode quality, I'm not going to get into that, because certainly Nicholas has done that to a great job with that, and he knows more about that than I do. I'm kind of the RFID geek, but certainly our team at the service bureaus maintain that and make sure that the equipment is maintained correctly, make sure that everything is set up correctly. We have a variety of mechanisms to do some of this. We have high-speed encoding systems, we call personalization machines from Milbauer and some others that we've designed ourselves that actually do, we have laser printing, we have inkjet printing, we have the thermal printing, and we also check every single tag to make sure we read the barcode to grade it. That's every tag. It's inline rather, and it then logs every barcode read and logs the EPC associated. So part of that system, it was a great expense that most people would not do on their own, but that's the business behind, to make sure we can push things quickly and get you the correctly encoded and printed tags as quickly and easily as possible. But there's been a lot of investment in that. That's not typical for a factory or supplier. Our QC team, like yourself, if you're going to print your own, needs to ensure that the data is correct. You need to have either automated or manual checks in place to make sure that you're printing and encoding the correct thing for the correct job. We also have tools to make sure that tags read. So every time we print a tag, we run it through. We actually, there's a few things right here that I'm going to mention, and I'm going to group them all together. We check to see what the RSSI, which is the signal strength. We check to make sure the barcode that's printed matches the encoding. We check we read the EPC, which is the RFID encoding, which I'm going to show you in a couple slides. And we also read the TID for that our trace technology, so we can trace all the way back. But it's a lot of times when you're doing a printer, if you do not calibrate it correctly, if you do not have the training, if you, as you're printing, you may print a label and you may be encoding the label next to it. So it's called cross encoding, and that's obviously a very bad thing, because if that mismatch happens, basically everything that you're taking inventory of, you're taking inventory of potentially the wrong thing, because I'm not sure, you would probably put the label on to match the printed information, but it would not match the encoded information. So you have to be very careful with that. A lot of printers have strict procedures for calibration as you load the labels or the hang tag stock. And if you don't follow that, it's very easy to cause a problem down the line. And certainly that would cause chargebacks. It's also putting a tag on a substrate that that detunes the tag, like metal or even some fabrics will detune, and it makes it difficult for the RFID to read. That could cause a chargeback because there's rules against that also that most retailers show. Double tagged items, that's certainly something after a print shop. If someone, as they're putting on tags, they happen to put 2 on a product versus 1, it's going to count as 2 items instead of 1. So all those things need to be caught. And how would you do that last one? It's very difficult. You would have to use some handheld tools or actually do some visual inspections. But basically, we're going to get into each one of these a little bit more. So, as I said, the secret sauce, the EPC, this is what you encode. Now, the UPC is in here. If you notice the company prefix and item reference, that actually, those 44 bits, and this on a tag, we typically use not a 96-bit EPC, and those 44 bits of the 96 bits can be directly decoded to the UPC of the product. It's actually the GTIN, but those 44 bits plus the 38 bits of the serial allow you to have a uniqueness for each and every item that you tag. So 38 bits is 2 to the 38th. It's billions of 254 billion, if I remember correctly. You know, it's individual serial numbers per UPC. Now the partition is important too. That actually allows you to separate and tell how long the company prefix of that barcode of the UPC is as compared to the item reference. So when you decode it, it's used in a lot of use cases. The filter allows you to say, okay, this is an item level, an individual item, or is it a master carton? Is it a pallet? Is it a whatever you can define? But typically it's an item level for the retail world these days. And the header tells you it's, in this case, for typical retail, it's an SG-10 96 as compared to a DOD version, as compared to several others. So each one of these pieces need to be proper when they're encoded on that tag. So that's why I say do your own encoding, maybe a little beyond what most companies want to bite off, at least initially. There is software to allow you to do this a little easier, but you still need to understand what this is in order to get it correct. Process flow. So when we typically do a tag and work with a company, there's a top-level serialization plan. So the brand owner, as I mentioned, is the one that's responsible for the serial number. And for instance, if you're going to work with more than one company to supply you printed and encoded tags, you have to tell them, okay, I want you to work with these serial numbers, and the next person to work with these serial numbers with no overlap, or for every order you give, you assign the serial numbers. There's multiple ways to do it, including a prefix in the serial number. But what that means is you have to have the plan, and usually the people you work with that do the service bureaus will work with you and help you arrive at that. If it's not a lot of times it's exclusive, but if it's not exclusive, that's when you run into those problems. So you want to make sure that there's no duplication within yourself and also within any service bureau that you're working with. So basically what we do is we work out a serialization plan with our customer base, and I'm sure everyone else in this industry does the same. r-pac would then receive and put those orders electronically into our r-track system, and we would then do the print and encode at any one of our service bureaus that is closest to you, and that we can get you the product the quickest. You know, we would then, you know, obviously do sampling, do that preliminary work, but then we would print and encode right from the closest location that makes sense. And basically at that point, we maintain a database that's of your data, that is every EPC created, as well as also with all the variable information that was printed, as well as all the, what printer was used, what high-speed encoder was used, what everything is in one spot. So if you ever needed to query, it's right there, and it's automatic and on demand as you see fit. So as I said from the start, I truly believe the Service Bureau is the way for most companies to go with. What is it doing? We have the production monitoring system. We do tag production and warehouse management using EPCs also. We monitor each tag through the whole production and commissioning. We keep track of all the data as it's done. We test each tag for duplication, as it says, data accuracy. We match the EPC to the UPC, and we will only send out a grade A or a grade B. We check for the barcode quality, and we maintain the logs of every single thing, as I mentioned. But most important, we do quality checks at every step. We check the chips at the wafer level. We check the inlays as we make them. We check the product after we convert it into a sticker or a hang tag. After we commission being printed in code, we check during that. We check at case packing, and we check at shipping. So we make sure that every step of the way, nothing happens to damage the product. Some of these are electronic, some of these are manual, but each step of the way, everything gets checked and logged. So as I mentioned before, item level traceability from r-pac. r-pac is our data and serialization management platform, but all the information and the provenance of each product is maintained in there, so we can trace it all the way back to ensure that if you're finding problems with a tag later on, that maybe it was how the chip was manufactured on that wafer, we can then see what other products, what other EPCs were generated from that wafer to keep a lookout. And certainly in some cases, when we see a high level, we'll certainly be proactive and do replacement, especially if it's in our supply chain. And this traceability is unmatched. It's kind of ahead of its time to track back to the wafer, but it also gives some interesting use cases that is starting to catch on. So the use cases certainly for anti-counterfeiting and black market and so forth are part of this whole thing, because we can track back and maintain the supply chain and ensure that there's no black market type stuff going on. We also have the r-pac retail software. This is the after the fact checking that if you would like to review a tag, it's very simple on a handheld RFID reader. It allows you to, scan the barcode of a product, scan the EPC of the RFID tag. It then can decode it if it's in the database. It'll say, okay, here's the GTIN. It'll break down the barcode and description and item reference, serial number, and all the pieces we talked about. If it's in the database, it'll tell you everything you need to know, including a description and style, color, size, everything. So it's in use, and it helps people actually ensure that the correct tag is on the correct product, because it's telling you this is what the encoding is and this is what it should be, and it's telling you that the encoding matches the print. And that's particularly useful for someone doing their own in-plant printing, because it gives you that tool that you didn't necessarily have if you're not using a service bureau. We do software traceability, source to store. You can track and trace everything. We do receiving validation. With RFID, we do pack validation. We do ship validation. We do cycle counting. So we have all the tools and the building blocks to allow you to do all those pieces, including like auto ASN creation, everything like that. So it breaks it all right down here. So, all the pieces that we talked about that, especially for receiving, packing, and shipping errors are caught. We have last year in this type of software, we had I know exactly how, about 600 million items scanned to do especially pack validation and ship validation, just to make sure that the boxes were properly packed, especially for pre-pack validation. If it's a pre-pack, people are checking to make sure that box is packed correctly before shipping it out. And here's a track and trace. I'm not going to go through this, but it's all the pieces that we talked about. And I know that we want to save some time for questions, so I'm going to just move forward. But I appreciate your time, everybody. And if there's certainly any questions, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you very much, Paul. We do appreciate your RFID geekiness and that you've taken the time to share your expertise with us today on that topic. We do have some questions from the audience, so we'll get into those in a moment. And if we have other questions that you would like to submit, please use the questions box. First question we have up is, what is an LP label? Chargeback mostly getting from Amazon. I'm not sure who exactly that is directed to. I'm thinking that it is probably to you, Nicholas. What is an LP label?
I think they may be talking about an LPN label. So
Okay.
LPN labels are what are called license plate number labels. And they're mainly used to drive the functionality of the print and apply systems or other sorting systems. So in the case of a manufacturer, if they were going to have a print and apply system applying the GS1 128 carton labels, then they would also use that in conjunction with LPN labels. So the LPN labels are basically just a serialization that runs and never duplicates and is used internally by the manufacturer, so that that label can be read. Usually they're applied to empty cartons. And then as that label moves by on the conveyor, it's read, and they've already assigned that particular number to a certain order, a certain PO with a certain retailer, going to a certain store. And that's how the print and apply equipment knows what particular label and information to print and apply to that carton in an automated system. Now with Amazon, they have their own LPN labels. From my knowledge, I believe that those are outsourced. I know that they do allow some manufacturers to print them in-house, but they also have a service bureau that provides them to other manufacturers that don't have any interest in printing them themselves. But if they're too light, or if there's any of the issues that I went over in my presentation, then they're not going to be able to be read at the Amazon DC and will cause a chargeback. So if the individual wants to email me directly, I can definitely get them some recommendations on getting those labels, printing them themselves. If they're not already doing that, that would be the best case, because we have had some of our customers who do sell to Amazon complain that the labels they do get from the authorized service bureau have not been up to par. So yeah, if they can contact me, we can talk about printing themselves and getting them the right materials to have quality labels and avoid those chargebacks.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I will provide both of your email addresses, both when we wrap up today, as well as within a wrap-up email that I will send to all attendees and registrants for this webinar. Second question we have that has come in is regarding RFID. What is the typical start to finish timing for a complete RFID setup?
Well, this is Paul. The onboarding, as we call it, for RFID setup, if it's something that we want to set up the r-pac system, such that you can do an EDI transfer or send the orders electronically, that will be done with your guidance within a couple weeks. If you want something to be able to pass us an Excel spreadsheet with the data, then we can do that literally within 2 days and start printing. And depending upon the approval cycle, who we have to send it to get approvals, if it's to typically what we would do for the customers, make some samples. They would send it to, depending upon the retailer, to the approvals locations. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time, but that's outside of us. We can do the samples within a day and get them out the door. But it depends on whoever's approving and whether or not where we are in the queue for them to say okay or not okay.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yep.
But it can get underway fairly quickly. That's a good thing.
Very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Nicholas, I have a question for you. I know that I am producing great barcoded carton labels, but is there anything I can do to help to prevent or minimize damage in transit?
Okay. Yeah, that goes back to some of the later slides about the durability aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are a lot of things that can be done. Mainly materials upgrades, as I mentioned, depending if the person is doing thermal transfer printing with a ribbon or if they're doing direct thermal printing. But there are definitely options there. And in some cases, also the position of the label, the way the cartons are loaded, the way the pallets are packed can be adjusted to prevent rubbing and movement. So there's some smaller things, but the main solution there is going to be the quality of the materials being used, and that can definitely directly increase the durability in transit.
Makes sense. Thank you. Looks like, Paul, the next question I believe is for you. The difference between a GS1 128 versus an ICCL.
Well, I'm going to defer to Nicholas if he knows what that is. GS1 128 versus an ICCL. I'm not sure myself.
What an ICCL is.
Yeah, on the ICCL, I believe that's for another level in the GS1 hierarchy of the identifiers, if I'm not mistaken. But the GS1 128 is the barcode, inside of which is going to be the identifier, which is going to be the SSCC, which is the carton identifier. So that identifier is going to match up with that barcode, again, using the code 128 set of bars to create that GS1 128 barcode. And that's the identifier for a carton level versus an item level. The UPC, the G1014 is going to be the identifier, for example, for an item or a category of item, just like the EPC is going to be the identifier for the actual individual physical instance of the item. So all the way up the chain, we have different identifiers for cartons, or not we, but GS1 for cartons and pallets. So that's what the, I hope that explains that a little bit better. But yeah, the other one I believe is for maybe a pack of items, but not a carton, maybe a sub pack in between a carton and a item. But I can look that up, or if they want to shoot me an email, I can find them the real information.
And I've just gotten a bit of a clarification. Perhaps ICCL terms used by Fashion Nova is what was added there. Does that help to provide some clarification on what that might be?
Not for me.
Okay.
Not on my side. I might be thinking of another identifier. There's some other ones. Maybe that's
all right. No worries.
Something else specific to that.
Connect up. So
manufacturer.
The attendee who's asking the question, it's a very good question. I will provide contact information for both presenters. So if you want to make outreach and have more dialogue around that, that would be. Yeah,
helpful. Certainly. I'd be willing to chase that down and look, but I just don't know off the top of my head.
And the point of these webinars is we all learn something new every day, right? So here's an opportunity to do exactly that. All right, we have another question here. What are the risks in printing or encoding my own RFID tags?
Well, since it says encoding, I'll grab that one. Certainly the printing is everything that Nicholas has stated, why you have to be careful about the print quality and data integrity. The similar thing comes into play with the RFID encoding. If you do not have the expertise, or you do not have, someone to actually work with you so you get expertise, it's a very challenging thing. Not only do you have to do the print quality and the data integrity, but you also have to make sure that, for instance, if you're using a printer, that it is properly calibrated, not just for physical media, but also for the RFID. And if you don't do both of those calibrations, you're going to have mismatches between the print and the encoding, and you'll have what's called cross encoding. You print on one and encode the next. The other thing that can happen is if you don't have an understanding of how to translate a UPC and a serial number into an EPC and use the right, filters and partitions and header, then you're not going to have something that will be translatable by the retailer you're sending it to. So some of the software will help you do that, but not all the software will help you do that. And you still have to have an understanding of what you're doing. Lastly, the serialization management to make sure that you do not have any duplication is critical. And you'll have to ensure that you take the responsibility of making sure there's no duplications and keep making sure you start off where you left off and so forth. But I think that's, as long as you can keep those pieces in place, you can do the job, but there definitely is an effort behind that.
Yeah, so it needs to be the recognition that there is inherent risk in doing that. Doable, but with some risk. All right, now I have another question here regarding thermal labels. I've heard that direct thermal labels can be worse than thermal transfer. Is that still true?
Okay, I'll take that one, obviously. Yeah, just to touch back on the other question about the ICCL, I wonder if the person asking the question was referencing maybe UCC instead of ICC. The GS1 128 barcode and standard was previously called the UCC 128, and that kind of language and terms are still around in the industry. So the UCC was the organization that turned into GS1 US,
right,
when it joined the GS1 global organization. But yeah, it was before the Uniform Code Council that was just operating here in the United States. So that might be that. But anyways, in that case, those two standards, those two standards are the same. UCC 128 is now GS1 128, so same standard. About the direct thermal versus thermal transfer, yeah, traditionally, thermal transfer has been a better option in the sense that it has a darker print. Also because the ribbon is made of a plastic or poly substrate, it's very smooth as it runs against the print head. So the print head touches the ribbon, which touches the paper, and then the ink is transferred to the paper. So there was higher print head life with thermal transfer. And direct thermal, again, historically, wasn't as dark, wasn't as durable, and then also caused increased print head life because the paper is rougher than the plastic film, so that when it rubbed against the print head during the printing process, it caused the print head to wear more quickly. What I can say is a lot of that has changed now. In the last 10 years especially, there's been huge advances in the direct thermal paper technology and manufacturing industry. And there are many options that have coatings on top of the direct thermal paper. And some of those are what we offer to our customers, including our scuff resist product. So in those cases, especially with that individual product, our scuff resist, we've done studies both internally and externally with our customers, and we found the difference in print head life to be negligible. So almost no difference in the amount of print heads used per year by the person operating those printers with that material.
Thank you, Nicholas.
So that's kind of gone, and it's still something that's out there historically, the idea.
Good, perfect, thank you. And with 1 minute left, I apologize, we're actually down to the wire. One final question came flying in. Can r-pac work with existing RFID structure, printers, readers, etc., or do r-pac customers need r-pac issued hardware? So that's our final question. To you, Paul.
Assuming that it's a RFID printer, our software will work with, the Zebras, the old Paxars. We work with Averys. We work with, Toshibas, and we work with Satos and Printronics. So I don't know of anything that we do not work with, but I have to reserve that to know the exact make and model. But I believe we would be able to work with anything.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's another connection point possibility. Final, just before I wrap up, ICCL stands for Inbound Carton Content Label. So we know that one little piece now. That's one thing we've learned today, but hopefully more contact on that. Thank you all for attending today's session. On behalf of RVCF, California Label Products, and r-pac International, we thank you for being here. We will send an on-demand version of this webinar as soon as that file is available, as well as other contact information. Nicholas can be contacted at ngarcia@californialabel.com and Paul at paularguin, paul.arguin, ARGUIN, at r-pac.com. And I will send out those email addresses in my wrap-up email. Thank you all for being here and have a good day. Bye all. Thank you.
Bye now. Thank you.